Welcome back to the Goku Report, and this is going to be part of a new box office versus special. Now, I chose in the background to show some which was technically a gift a while back by a family member, which was a series of three movies called Left Behind. And specifically, this being the first one. So, recently I was going through movies and I remembered and saw this, and I was like, that's an idea for a future box office versus list. So, here it is today, box office versus. The original 2000/2001 Left Behind movie, starring, of course, the former star from the 1980s sitcom known as Growing Pains, Kirk Cameron, versus the 2014 attempted redo film, which I don't remember the name, production company would be involved in the 2014 version, starring, of course, the very cheesy, overacting Nicolas Cage. So, with that said, but also quickly mention the original production company that would do the original version of Left Behind was at the time known as Cloud 10 Pictures, which does not exist today. Cloud 10 in the early 2000s, well, late 90s, early 2000s, would get into doing a lot of, like, I guess you could say, apocalyptic era type films. They would do the three original Left Behind movies based on the Left Behind books, of course, by the same name. They would also do a series of four films called the Apocalypse series, which I may do future interesting reviews of, since I've noticed here on YouTube hardly anyone has covered these films over the years. Or if they have, it's mostly been edgelords, just taking cheap shots in general at religious films for very easy, cheap grabs by seculars. Myself, I consider myself a moderate secularist myself. But with that said, I don't believe in disrespecting their faiths. At the same time, I believe in respect for everyone. But with that said, with this new box office versus, and at the end, I will give my own personal opinion. Now, of course, like I said, in order to make it on a series, I have to have seen both films. Now, I only just recently, for the first time, saw on, I believe it was Netflix or some, I saw the 2014 Nicolas Cage, and I will say, boy, was it a dumpster fire. The original wasn't great, but it's certainly better. But with that said, the 2000 release, or originally called Left Behind 2000, would actually be released on February the 2nd, 2001. It would be 1 hour and 40 minutes long. It would be rated PG 13, but the budget is unknown. Cloud 10 Pictures was never big on sharing budgets. One fun fact about Cloud 10 films is pretty much all of their stuff would always be filmed in Canada, specifically areas like Alberta, sometimes also Vancouver, but more central to more western parts of Canada is where Cloud 10 would do most of their production. And the same thing for the original Left Behind would be filmed in Canada. But with that said, also looking quickly at the other one, it would be released in 2014 on October the 3rd, weirdly enough. It would be an hour and 50 minutes, so 10 minutes longer. Now, it actually does have its production budget shown at $16 million. Then we look at box office. With the original 2001, it had only a domestic release, no worldwide release. But it would make around $4,224,065. It was not a big box office hit at all. Now, there was a lot of rumors that in total, the actual cost of Left Behind 2000 was estimated to only be around maybe 1 to 1.5 million. So it actually did make a profit, even if a very minuscule profit at that. But still, did not hurt Cloud 10. at first. But then we see the 2014. It'd end up making $14,019,924 domestically, making up 51.2% worldwide. It would gross $27,405,896. So it'd make about $27.5 million on a $16 million budget. So it didn't make really a profit, which is probably why no more films, plus also the fact it won an award for the year it came out as Worst Film of the Year. And I understand after recently watching it for the first time why. Now, looking at Rotten Tomatoes scores are quite interesting. Overall, it's definitely more in favor of the 2000 original. Now, still not great. Among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, critics gave the original Left Behind a 16% critic score, with, on the other hand, a very different tale on the audience score. Like I said, 16% for critics. Audience score is 56%. So a 40% difference. Quite a difference between audience versus. And I kind of understand why it has a 56% audience score. I'm not surprised. Because if you're a very religious person stuff, I could definitely see really a lot of people gravitating. Plus the fact several of my own family members are pretty big fans of the Left Behind films, so I'm not really one bit surprised. And to be fair, from watching it, I've personally seen this film probably 6 or 7 times over the years. So, even though it's not a great film, I do think it's one of the better overall apocalyptic, like a tribulation type stories. I definitely think it's one of the better films. There's definitely a lot of overacting and cheesiness in the film, but it's definitely better than many other religious films I've seen over the years. With that said, looking on the other hand for the 2014, boy oh boy, critics score on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 1% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has only a 3% audience score. So, pretty simple to say, it's despised by both audiences and critics alike, unlike the original. Metacritic, on the other hand, um, the original would have a 22% critic score on Metacritic. It has a 4.5 out of 10 audience score, which is not too bad, I guess you could say. Now, surprisingly, the 2014 did a little better on Metacritic, as a 12% critic score, has a 2.5 audience, however. Then, the last but not least, IMDb. The original has a 4.5 out of 10. IMDb, surprisingly, though, has a 3.1 for the 2014 version. Now, my final thoughts on both films. Personally, I definitely, by a very easy decision, in my opinion, of the two films, which do I think wins? Easy. The original 2000 or 2001 film wins. Also, the fact, I'll admit a little bias just because I actually don't mind. I keep in mind when this film originally came out, Kirk Cameron wasn't considered as much of a joke as a lot of people consider him nowadays because of a lot of the stuff he's done over the years. But at this time, he was still reasonably respected because this was like less than a decade after the end of Growing Pains, which arguably is one of the most popular family sitcoms of the 1980s. And and saying that as somebody who has Growing Pains in my top 10 favorite shows of the 80s myself. So I grew up with Kirk Cameron, so I'll admit a little bias, though I'm a fan of Nicolas Cage, but if I want overacting and stuff cheesy Nick Cage, I would rather watch films like The Wicker Man over the 2014 Left Behind film. With that said, let me know if you ever like me to touch on or talk about the original Left Behind, or heck, any of the other two films that come in this box set, which include the second film called Tribulation Force and the third film called Left Behind World at War. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. And I will say, one of the key things, positives I will give about the first film is I actually like the actor who they have playing who would become the Antichrist. Um, of course, that being Nikolai Carpathia. So, with that said, now there is a apocalyptic type film. Actually, I'd be very interested about talking about that I personally really enjoy, and that is Omega to Megiddo, or Megiddo, however you want to pronounce, starring, of course, one of my personal, I think, underrated actors, that being Michael York. But with that said, this is my look, in my opinion, on the battle between the original and then the attempted reboot of Left Behind. So leave a comment, tell me what you think. Also in the future, I'm looking at possibly putting up a pig movie versus a pig movie in box office versus a flashback to the 90s. Gordy versus Babe. So I'll see you next time for that, as well as some future album and movie reviews. But stay safe out there. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.